Welcome me, welcome everybody back here once again to Building Stuff with Nova. I'm super happy to have y'all here today because we are live and direct to you right now, coming to you on Twitch. Shout out to the building committee and on YouTube. So if you are excited as I am, I'm excited to be here. I need to know who's in the chat. I need to see some love. I need to see some emotes. Welcome, Nova. Thank you for bringing us into our stream once again. And I'm telling you, today you are in for a treat. Today you're in for a treat because I'm excited. I have a special guest, and we're going to give you all a sneak peek into another facet of this program, another facet of this project. You thought it was just Twitch? You thought it was just escape rooms? No, there is more going on. In fact, we're going to give you a sneak peek into a 3-part documentary series that has to do with building stuff. But first, before I get too far ahead of myself, this is Building Stuff with Nova. I am your host, Dr. Nehemiah Mabry, but you can call me Dr. Nee. I consider myself a mentor in some occasions, a mentee in other occasions. It all depends on what we're doing that particular day. And today is no different because this is your interactive, your virtual makerspace, if you will, your ideation laboratory. This is your mastermind where you and I and you, we all together, we can build right here on Building Stuff with Nova. So happy to see you. Shout out to future doctors coming to us over on Twitch. We see you. Nova is live and direct. Who do we got on YouTube? We see that Opal guy. Always great to see you. Hang out with us here. Yep. Woohoo. Thanks, Nova. We see you, Boogie. Yes. Thank you so much for coming through. We are so excited because today is another great day on the platform. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our agenda. Let's bring our agenda up on the screen. Uh-oh, I see JM Sips. Oh, I see you over on Twitch. Is this my friend Jay? I see you, Jay. Good to see you. All right, so let me tell you what we got going on today, y'all. Over on my side right here, you can see our agenda. We are welcoming. We are checking in. We're knowing who's here. We see the building committee on Twitch. That's how we refer to you. That's how we refer to us, our community. And to further notice, we're the building committee. And we see you on YouTube. Hey, by the way, if this is your first time, JM Simp, y'all give some welcome to JM Simp. Anybody, first time, go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube and hit follow on Twitch. We want to make sure that you all stay in the loop and that you know what we're doing every day right here at 1 p.m. Eastern. But after we check in, we are about to, in a bit, give you a little sneak peek. We're gonna wet your taste buds just a tad bit as it relates to what is a 3-part Building Stuff documentary series brought to you by Nova. That's right. There's going to be 3 parts of a 3-hour documentary. I believe it's 3 hours. We're going to get a link dropped in the chat in just a little bit where you can read up more about it. But I'm just going to give you a little sneak peek about what's to come after we conclude, even on the heels of this Twitch project. And then we're going to bring a special guest, David Fields, fellow engineer, structural engineer, if you will. David Fields is going to join us in just a little bit. We're going to introduce him. And he is indeed one of the engineers featured in our 3-part documentary series. So we're going to bring him on in just a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Skyscrapers versus Win. Skyscraper versus Win. Oh, we got to tweak that word in there a little bit. We're going to make sure that you all can learn not only about what he talks about in the documentary, because we have a little clip, but we're going to also talk about other projects that David was able to be a part of. What up, Outbound? If that sounds cool, let me see y'all say cool in the chat. COOL, let me know if you are happy about our agenda, because I think this is a fire day ahead of us right now. We see you, that Opal guy. Hit the like. Thank you so much. Hit the like on YouTube. Hit the follow on Twitch. Hit the subscribe on YouTube. And drop something in the chat if you haven't yet. Thank you, Outbound. Cool. We are good to go. All right, so let me go ahead and break this down for you all. As you know, this particular project, getting into this documentary series and this sneak peek, this particular project, I want you all to understand that obviously we are so happy to have this community brought to us by Nova. Now, Nova is really one of the most popular, if not the most popular, science documentary series on American television, right? Nova is known for demystifying the technological concepts and looking at all these different things that shape and define our lives, our planet, and our universe. Nova has done a very good job for years, 50 years to be exact, with inspiring, challenging, expanding our mind through science communication and journalism. And this particular project with Building Stuff is no different. You already know, if you are a regular here, if not, you should become one, but we already been doing Twitch for the last several weeks. we are culminating in a 4-day engineering escape room that's going to take place in October. And on the heels of that escape room, there is going to be a launch of a 3-part documentary series. Let me change my view here. I'm going to share my screen. And Nova, if you could do me a favor, go ahead and drop this link in the chat. Here is a release we put out, we being Nova, last month sometime in July, that you all can see a little bit more about or read up a little bit more on this entire project as a whole. As you can see, the Nova series launches its first ever Twitch channel, where we are right now, building stuff with Nova, ahead of a three-part documentary special premiering in November 13th through the 27th. And these particular documentaries have different names that kind of fit with each other all around the idea of building stuff. So the first one that's premiering on November 13th is known as Boosted. You can check it out here, November 13th. Then the following week, 7 days later, on November 20th, by the way, sidebar, November 20th is a special day. I heard that great people were born on November 20th. I'm just going to say that really quick. That's a great birthday. That's a great birthday to have. But anyway, another thing that's great about November 20th is that Building Stuff Reach It, the particular documentary that we're going to have a peek in today that David is featured in, is going to be premiering on November 20th, Wednesday, November 20th. And then the third part of the series is called Change It. Building Stuff Change It, that will premiere on November 27th. Thank you so much, Nova, for putting that in the chat. If you all want to check out more about this release, it talks all about all the people, not just yours truly, that is a part of this project, but all the great people, the great producers there at Nova. So shout out to the Nova team. Shout out to the visionaries and the ideators around this entire Building Stuff project. And I hope that you all are prepared to check it out here in November. I see you, future doctors. Said not you plugging your birthday. I'm just saying November 20th is not a bad day. So I want you all to know that this is going to be something that you have to catch. And if you plan on catching it, if you're going to keep your eyes out for it, just let me know in the chat. Say, we're going to check it out, Need. Let me know saying we're going to check it out, because I know for sure that November, that time frame, A, is just a great time of the year. And B, you got some great content coming your way thanks to Nova. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Nova. Thank you, everybody. All right, so here's what we're going to do right now. I am going to introduce to you all who we have today as our guest. We have an engineer, a fellow structural engineer that will be joining us today. Now, you all probably already know that I am a structural engineer, and when we start talking about how we're going to feature and get a sneak peek into this documentary series, you know, my mind and my eyes and my attention automatically turn to people that I can relate to so much, who are doing a number of great things in the world of engineering, but none greater than this gentleman that we are going to bring today that goes by the name of David Fields. David Fields, PESC, lead AP. He is a credentialed structural engineer and a senior principal engineer of MKA, coming to us with a portfolio of more than 80 residential projects, which includes towers up to 100 stories, multi-block developments up to 3.8 million square feet, and more than 100 projects in the areas of high seismicity. Seismicity. Sorry about that. Pronounced that a little off. But ultimately, that refers to earthquakes, in case you didn't know. And I am excited to bring this engineer to you all right here on Building Stuff with Nova. I see Papa Stimmers in the house. I see everybody is hanging out with us. So I need you all to do me a favor. Let's get some energy going. Let's get some emotes. I want to see some emojis. Drop some fire, some hand claps. I need some love in the chat as I, at this time, bring our guest today to Building Stuff with Nova, introducing to some, presenting to others, none other than a fellow structural engineer by the name of David Fields. Let's give it up. David, the love is coming in. We got the emotes over on Twitch. We got the exclamation points. Shout out to A Clockwork. Yeah, Papa Stim is happy to see you. How you doing, David? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Dr. Nee. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Are you excited? I'm excited because, again,
I'm excited.
I feel like kindred spirits with you here. You have a very impressive resume, I must say, one that I look at and I say, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm so excited to have you on, not only today, but to also specific projects here in just a little bit. But why don't you just tell the people?
Is 12A on Alaska Airlines. That we work around the country,
Yes.
which is great. You get to be in part of exciting projects all over the place.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you travel around, and let's see. I want to make sure I got a little note here on YouTube that said there was a little bit of frozen. Everyone can see me good. Can everybody see and hear me and David well? Drop the number 1. If we need to make an adjustment, let us know what that adjustment needs to make. I want to make sure that everybody is able to see me and hear what David and I are about to discuss. David telling us that he has a reserved seat on the airplane because you do a lot of traveling. Is this something that you could say the younger David would look at and be like, wow, what an amazing place? Do you feel like amazing career? Do you feel like that's something that the younger David would say?
It would have blown my mind. I'm from a little town in Alaska.
Yes.
Tallest building was about 10, 12 stories. And, I'd occasionally visit the big city and stare up and be amazed. Fast forward a lot of years. It still kind of amazes me. Gets me really excited to be part of this profession.
Wow. Born and raised in Alaska?
Yeah, born and raised in Alaska. Juneau, which is the capital, but still one high school town. It's that small.
Yeah, man. So Alaska is where you were born, where you were raised, and then I understand that in terms of college, you left Alaska and went down south, went down to California, south of where you were at least. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Well, when the time came and I rolled open the map and started looking around, it got pretty obvious. Bottom left is where the beaches were, where the sun was.
Yeah.
Different lifestyle. It was a great school, UC San Diego, but I didn't make that decision based on structural engineering because when you're an 18-year-old kid, you don't really know what the future holds. But fortunately, it all worked out where the program there is really one of the best in the country, and I got a great education down there.
Yes, I agree. I know UC San Diego, even when I was in school, was known to be a great program. And it's pretty cool to meet someone now that has graduated from the program. I know some other people that were there for a time. I think I shared with you offline. But one thing that's interesting about your story is that, some decisions are ones you make and you stick with, and then some you tweak a little bit. And I understand that when you first got to UC San Diego, structural engineering wasn't your original major, was it?
Not at all. Yeah. I was good at math, I was good at science, but who knows what the heck it was going to be when you're 18. So I was in computer science. And, a lot of people might say it might have been not a bad choice to stay in computer science starting in the 90s in California. A lot of great companies, a lot of influence, and a lot of great products came out of that time and continued through there. But, as I got a little older, a year or two into it, I started thinking about how I actually wanted to spend my time.
Mm-hmm.
And, the concept I had was, well, if I write software, 3 years later, it's in the trash bin as the next generation comes out. If I design a building, it's going to be there for my kids to see, my grandkids to see.
Yeah.
So it was, the draw to the legacy and making a physical change in the world that really steered me in a different direction by the time I was 20. And no looking back, no regrets. It's been amazing.
No regrets. You're right. Because technology, especially today, it's like, boom, here today, gone tomorrow. Something's better. The moment something hits the shelf, there's probably like 2-3 generations already in R&D. And I guess buildings, you're right. We have buildings around for decades. And so you're able to point to those in your family, people in your family and say, hey, I did that. I contributed to that. I love that. I love that perspective. And we're going to get back to that here. I want to set up a clip that I want to show everybody about the part of the second documentary, Reach It, that's in this series that you were featured in here in just a second, right? But before we do that, I want to ask you one more question. And I see you at Clockwork. Thank you all. Feel free to drop your questions, by the way, chat. By all means, drop your questions. We will sort of pause when we can as we get deeper into David's work. But the question I just want to ask you real quick is, as we get ready to set up this project that we're going to share with people here on this clip, can you just say one thing that has helped you quickly embrace challenges, right? When it comes to like, hey, I know that I want to do this, but some people will deal with this whole idea of like, what if I can, or what if I can't, or what if I feel like? Can you just give a quick little note of what inspires you to reach for things, even though it may be impressive to you? What helps you address sort of the challenge and overcoming the daunting aspect of things?
Well, that's a great question. I think back to the career arc, and I've been doing it more than 25 years. In the beginning, I didn't strive for the make the impossible happen. It was, learn the trade, learn the craft, get some expertise. But as time goes by, you get pretty good at that stuff, and getting asked the same question and solving the same problem over and over. That's not a satisfying career. So it's actually the ability and the gift to be asked to be part of these really extreme, really challenging buildings. Almost every week, I'll say that I'm being asked, or I'm answering a question that I've never seen before. Maybe no one's ever seen before. It's usually not quite that extreme, but it's always new questions. And I guess, they're daunting and sometimes they're scary and you go out on a limb, but I guess to answer your question more directly, how do I handle it? That's the fun. That's the whole reason to get up out of bed in the morning. It's not to go work and be easy and answer the same question you answered before. It's like, that's the whole reason for doing it.
Got you. So you're inspired by it. So I wanted the chat to know, you all, as we get ready to move forward, we have on the screen a clip we're going to show here. And I'm going to try to make sure that the volume is decent so everybody on YouTube and on Twitch can hear it. And then we'll chat a little bit more with David here after we play this clip.
David Fields is the chief structural engineer at 1000M.
In our modern era, we're seeing buildings get taller and taller and more slender. This is pushing the ragged edge of structural engineering and what can be built and what can be cost effective.
David is responsible for ensuring the structure's strength and integrity. And of all the forces that can damage a skyscraper, wind is one of the biggest threats. Not only to the structural integrity of a building, but to its very livability as well. It can make people physically ill with a kind of high-rise seasickness. It's a problem that only became apparent as tall buildings evolved, from heavy structures like the Empire State Building to today's lighter steel-framed buildings, like 1000M. Originally designed by the late architect Helmut Jahn, now overseen by architect Linda Dawsey.
Architecture is a balance between beauty and function. We are hired to solve a problem and solve it beautifully. The ultimate goal is to deliver a feasible, functional building.
Looking at our structural plan, we can see. I think of structural engineering as designing the bones within a body. We think about where to put a core, where to put bracing, and that happens very, very early, and it shapes fundamentally almost everything within the building.
I think you gave us an extra few feet.
Structural engineers and architectural engineers, in some ways, they're cut from the same cloth. We do push on them a lot to try and achieve our aesthetic goals, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to safety and comfort.
So why is wind such a problem?
As wind blows on a building at low speeds, it tends to approach a building and wrap around it smoothly. As the wind blows faster and faster, it starts to eddy on the backside. As wind blows even faster, those eddies, we call them vortices, they peel off. They peel off the building rhythmically and kind of side to side. This gets a building rocking and swaying at high wind speeds.
If you're building a rental building or if you're building a condo building, these are people's homes. They live in them, and you want them to feel as comfortable there as they would anywhere else.
All right, well, here we are, top of the building.
Luckily, there is an ingenious engineering solution under construction here, on the top floor. Two large concrete boxes called mass dampers. Both will be filled with water to suppress building sway. As wind pushes the building in one direction, the water with all its weight sloshes in the opposite direction. This counterbalancing motion dampens or offsets the sway of the building.
Here we have a demonstration of tuned sloshing dampers. We have two frames that have effectively the same natural frequency. Now on top of these, we'll put 2 identical damper boxes. We'll fill one with just the right amount of water. And we'll see both how much less it sways and how much quicker the swaying stops.
The box with water settles faster than the box without water.
What works here is exactly the same that works here in a much larger scale.
So David, we just got a chance. I hope y'all like that. Did y'all like that? Chat, let me know if y'all thought that was a pretty interesting clip. We got a chance to show them, David, man, some incredible technology around this particular project that you all did in Chicago, 1000M. And obviously we're going to get into the technology and the whole idea behind what you just demonstrated there with the dampening, the advanced dampening system. But how did this project come about? First of all, give us a little bit of context around the 1000M. Why is it even called that? And then let's talk more about the idea that you just presented there on screen with the dampening.
Sure. So building's 1000M because the address is 1000 Michigan, or specifically 1000 South Michigan. Yeah, which is, in Chicago, being on Michigan Avenue is a pretty prestigious address. Mm-hmm. This is right on the park, down by south end of the park, Grant Park. So it's basically overlooking several blocks of park and right across the lake. When high-rise buildings start, they start in the minds of developers and architects before they get to structural engineers. And, there's lots of competing interests, but, one of them absolutely is how to build the most building that they're allowed. Yeah. And if you got a footprint, if you got a postage stamp lot, but you're allowed to build millions of square feet, that just means you're going to go tall and you're going to go skinny. Mm-hmm. So, when the project came to us, when we got signed up to be part of the team with Jan Architects, the initial renderings by the architect showed a very tall, skinny building. And, we're in the Windy City, and that means a lot of things, but it means when you have a super tall, slender building, dealing with the wind is front of mind. So, right out of the gate, we started in discussing the structure, but less so discussing how to hold it up against gravity, more so how to hold it stable against the wind. So
wind is more of an issue for skyscrapers than the weight and all these other factors, other loads.
I don't know if I'd say more of an issue, but just say it's more of a challenge, or more of less of an obvious answer. Okay. If it's the 40-story or an 80-story building, how you hold it up might be fairly similar, but how you resist the wind is going to be very different.
Right. And you broke down in here, just to kind of move through it a little bit so people can see, you broke down some of the reasons why, because when the wind is flowing past the structure, you said it sort of eddies on the back end, and then it begins to sort of rip off. The vortices begin to rip off. Break that down a little bit more, and how that increases issues the taller you get with these skyscrapers.
Yeah, so the wind's blowing on. Well, we think of wind as force and pressure pushing on a building. We think the building has to be strong enough to resist it, and that's obviously the case, and that's the starting point, because that's safety. As you get taller and taller and more slender, the building gets quite flexible. So this building, it might take about 5 seconds for it to sway back and forth on its own. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't matter if it's a really small wind or a really big wind. It's going to take about 5 seconds to sway back and forth. The difference is how far it sways. Right. So when the wind blows on the building and the vortices form on the backside and they start to peel off at a certain wind speed and a certain wind direction, they peel off at every 5 seconds. And it gets in tune. It starts resonating with the building. And that's the danger zone. And that's where we have to study it harder. And that's why we go to a wind tunnel, because actually computers aren't good enough yet to tell us that. You actually do physical modeling. So this 800-foot building had about a 2-foot tall physical model inside a tunnel to study these effects. And that tells us how the wind blows and these eddies go and how they peel off. So we can then do the structural engineering to resist all the forces and all the sway effects.
Got you. And when you said resonance, the building committee probably knows. Chat, you all probably remember, if you hung out with us back earlier when we talked about the bridge in Washington that really began to kind of hit a lot of resonant frequency, and we ran into a lot of issues there. We don't want that, because that's when more damage can occur, right, David? Like when it hits the resonant, when it begins to resonate, that's when you're gonna experience, like you said, a danger zone of our structural integrity. And so your dampening
we can really
system,
start amplifying.
boom. So your dampening system, to get into that a little bit too, and I'm gonna go to that part of the clip, is basically the goal of it is to interrupt the resonance, right? Like to stop that from happening.
Yeah, exactly. I think of let's call it resonance in a way that makes things increase. Is you push someone on a swing. Someone's swinging on a swing. It takes them a certain amount of time to go back and forth. Exactly the same phenomenon I'm talking about of the building swing. You want them to go higher and higher. What do? You push them at exactly the right time, and you push them in exactly the right direction, right? Push them in the lower back, right when they're at the bottom each time. Now, let's say you push them when they're halfway through their swing. It's going to go all crazy. Or let's say you push them when they're right at the bottom, but the wrong direction, right? Well, they're not going to go higher and higher. They're going to go lower and lower. And that's what tuned damping systems in buildings do. They're called tuned because we learn how the building sways.
Yep.
We put a damper in it that moves at exactly the same rate or the same period or the same frequency, we call it. But we make sure that it puts a little force into the building exactly the opposite direction of how it's trying to sway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing here, right? With the water. Now, and I want to know a little bit more because you did a great job at the end of our clip. And by the way, let me say shout out to Nova. Nova, can you put a quick definition of resonance so people can see that? I think that would be really cool. A definition of resonance, just so people can get the academic term. But what we see, David, here in this little model you have, and I understand you got some other cool stuff you're going to show us here on the stream. But can you talk a little bit quickly about this little model, like that you're showing? You put the two dampers on it at the top, and you put a little bit of water on it. First of all, I thought that was brilliant. Brilliant little example of it right here that we're seeing. But can you talk about where the idea came from? Is this older technology that's been around for a while, or kind of give us the whole idea or the thought process behind even approaching this solution?
Sure. So, damping's been around for decades, and the idea of using a water tank has been around for decades. The total number of buildings in the world with damping is a tiny fraction, tiny fraction. Most buildings don't need it. And I'll say that it's good to have a damping system that is very reliable, that doesn't break down or doesn't need to be plugged in or doesn't rely on some part to not break.
Right.
And water's pretty reliable. It's not you don't got to plug it in. It's not going to break, and it flushes in the tank pretty reliably. So it's it takes space that's relatively shallow and very long, as opposed to other systems, and it's long because we tune it. So since the building takes 5 seconds to sway, the water in the tank takes 5 seconds to go all the way to one end and then all the way back. So we tune the length of the tanks and the depth of the water to make sure that wave action matches the building. Now, alternate solutions, and actually one of my favorites isn't a building we did. It's called Taipei 101.
Yes.
And instead of it being broad and short, it's very tall and narrow. And up at the cone of the building, it's a steel pendulum swinging back and forth with hydraulic pistons. Yeah, and they wrapped it in observation decks. It's such a cool building and a cool example of damping. That's more recent, and it's more, and there's many types, but it's one that has different geometry, different cost. Costs more than water, and but they celebrate it in that building, so it's part of the attraction.
Right. And I see you all's questions coming in. I'll pause and take a few of them really quick. You talking about let me switch out of this view too. I want to make sure, because we want to see a few things on your end as it relates to 1000M. But someone asked a question, a clockwork. We see like how tall, how high realistically can we build skyscrapers? And that's a question I'm asking on the side of this in light of damping, because I would imagine that the taller you get, if you look at the bottom as being sort of like the fixed end, the sway or the amount of sway would increase, right? Like the taller, just from a pure length cantilever standpoint. So is there like a limit, or is it more so like, hey, as long as you can dampen it, you're good to go? Is that kind of what do you say to that?
Yeah, anytime someone says there's a limit, somebody out there goes and proves them wrong. So I hesitate to say there are limits to physics for sure. There are many other limits that are non-structural on how tall a building can go, or they impose constraints. But if you look at the buildings that are going taller and taller, they're in the Middle East, And part of that is the large financial availability, but also they're not tucked into dense urban cores, so they're not it's a cantilever, and as the peak place is at the bottom. That's where the peak stresses are. But many of these buildings are generally they kind of swell out at the base, and they swell out because they can transfer their loads to the foundation. They can grab buttresses and stiffen the building at lower levels.
Mm-hmm.
But no doubt, the top of the building is very flexible in a safe way. They swing back and forth a long way. But if this building takes 5 seconds, maybe they take 10, and maybe some are approaching 15. They're going taller and taller almost every year.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so check this out. I want to ask you, and I think chat is going to be excited this. Are there any other things you can show us that didn't make the film? Like, you all going to have to wait till November, and I think the answer is yes. I see some of the questions. People are curious. You got a legit sneak peek, chat. You all got a legit sneak peek. But I'm going to ask David for something that you all probably may not see in November. So David, if you can, maybe show us a little bit of the behind the scenes of how this designing or analysis took place, considering the wind. What do we have here? Let me go to a new thing. What do we have here? I think we got something blocking there, but go ahead.
All right. So you're seeing a bunch of arrows in a gray box?
Not yet. We got something blocking it here, and I'm going to switch it over so everybody can see. We got like a big square there in the middle. There we go. There we go. We see it now.
Yeah.
We see it now.
All right. So, I'll say a lot of what we do when we talk to architects and developers, we need columns, we need beams. It's all pretty straightforward. People understand that. When we get to these taller, more extreme buildings, there's a little bit of let's call it a quasi-educational aspect where you have to explain why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm going to take a quarter of your roof putting damper tanks on it. And they, look a little cross-eyed and say, "You sure?" Explain, please. So, the little models we had previously where we put the damper tank, the physical model, that's something we developed years ago to kind of, in physical reality, educate the developers and architects we work with so they understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
Here's an image that is, it's a little video, and it shows how this works. So I'm going to pause it here. This is looking overhead from the sky.
The gray square is the top of the building, and
top of the building, looking down.
And then the
wind's
arrows,
coming left to right.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. You got it. Arrows are showing the direction, right? So as the wind's blowing, as you expect, it wraps the building, and it creates this eddy on the backside. You see, the arrows are even coming back a little bit.
Right.
But as the wind speeds up, that eddy starts to fluctuate side to side.
Yes.
And now you're seeing the arrows out here wrap, but directly next to the building, if it's big enough, they're going to the side. And as it sways, it reverses direction. And faster and faster. Now the eddies are peeling off rhythmically, and that's when it can start to match the resonant frequency of the building.
Yep.
But this side-to-side sway, that's a key piece of it. So when we think about wind blowing on a building in one direction, of course it leans in that direction. But this backside opposing forces means it goes back and forth in the orthogonal direction. So if the wind's blowing from the east, the building's going to lean that direction, but it's going to start swaying in the opposite direction, back and forth. And that sway can make huge forces we have to design for. But more often, when that sway actually matches the human body's perception, then people inside, whether they're working at a desk or sitting at the dining room table and the overhead light starts to swing, then they feel real uncomfortable, and they can actually get motion sickness. And that's even though it's a safe building, it's a failed building. So that's what we're looking for in the wind tunnel. That's why we're put the damper tanks in it. But this is a kind of a simple 2D visualization in a computer of how it works.
Man, this is dope. Chat, I see you all's comments as well. Let David know how cool this is. David, let me ask you this. What about this area that doesn't have any arrows though? Like, what about these, like, close on the sides of the building? Is that like essentially a vacuum where it's like wind is not moving in any direction, or what is that?
Yeah, it's kind of a still area. So, there's not much pressure happening on the building at all, right? If it was a vacuum, right, that would actually be arrows pulling away from it. But it's just kind of still air. And, this very squarish form is not great. It's very common for buildings, but it's not great for this effect. So some of the time, and here, let me bring up another image here that I
Yeah,
think is
by all
interesting in
means,
this
by all
conversation.
means. Yes, I see you all's questions. We'll come to them in just a second. And as a matter of fact, let me look at some of them as they come. Go ahead. Let me see. There was another question up as David is changing the view. Okay. Hold on. We'll come back to the question. David,
Here we go.
You got a picture of a
here's the
wind
building.
tunnel.
Yeah, here's 1000M, and we model it. We model the buildings around it because it's important because they disrupt the wind that's coming at us. Sometimes they shield it and block it. Sometimes they actually, their vortices peel off and hit our building rhythmically. So you have to pick up those effects. So this is a couple feet tall. So it's a scale model. This is looking up the guts of the wind tunnel. So they blow the wind in this direction right at us.
Oh, so the
And
wind
this
is coming from
circular
where
shape-
we're looking. The wind is coming from where we're looking, not
Yep.
from those red things. Okay. It's going towards those red things. Got it.
And this is on a circular turntable. So what they do is they blow the wind, they take readings, they turn it 10 degrees, do it again, turn it 10 degrees. So that's how they pick up the wind effects from every different direction.
Got it. And then all the other little models, they help you all to see how the other buildings will also affect, because it's not like the building is hitting the wind straight on. It's a lot of different, effects that's coming from the surrounding structures as well, right?
That's right. So sometimes we'll know in advance we're going to be on the ragged edge. And when the developer, I'll say, is wise and early on, once they believe us that they're going to be on the ragged edge, the building form isn't finalized yet when we go to the wind tunnel. We'll say, we think we might have issues. We think your square building is going to really resonate.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think of several alternate geometries, and we'll go into the wind tunnel with several of these, and they kind of like Legos, plug in, plug out, and we run it. So rounded edges, scalloped edges, reentrant corners, that can really disrupt the wind and break up the wind and get all the resonance and the sway effects way down. So sometimes these are such extreme effects, they overall shape the building.
Got you. So this helps to make the decisions. And I see all the chats coming in. People say they're going to share this with their sons who want to be, an architect. A structural engineer. People were bringing up movies, Twister. That's a great wind tunnel. Compliments on the wind tunnel. David, let me ask you this as I see if there's maybe one question I can slide in. I'm going to ask him, by the way, chat, to show us some other structures that he's worked on. David, that's my question. Is there another structure that we didn't highlight in the documentaries that we can touch on, and maybe share some cool facts about with the audience as I search for a good question to ask you?
Sure.
Let's see.
Yeah. So I'll just zoom in here on 1000M and then take you to one of its not distant neighbors that is another example of some pretty extreme.
Are we staying in Chicago?
Engineering.
We're staying in Chicago, huh?
Staying in Chicago.
Okay.
Here's Grant Park, Millennium Park. Here's actually, 1000M's only been open for less than a year. So, here it is it's still rendered in construction in Google Earth.
Okay.
So you see it's right on the park. But, at the other end of the park is a building it just opened a few years ago called St. Regis. And it's a 100-story building. Whoop, a little jumpy on me. It's the 100-story building. So it's actually 1,200 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this building you see here, kind of in 3 parts. One of the cool things about it, it's the tallest building in the world designed by a female architect, Jeannie Gang.
Okay.
And it's right on the waterfront. But if you look at it from this aspect, it's very tall.
Yeah.
You see it here, very tall and very skinny in this direction. So as the wind is coming, actually the prevailing wind here is coming from the east, coming out over from the west towards the east. As it wraps around the building, it's pretty extreme effects. And this building has 6 damper tanks in it, but has an extra feature in it that further confuses the wind. If you can see it here, this 2 stories here, that's no blue glass on it. That's actually a blow-through floor. So that's the core and the elevators go through, but there's no glass on it. There's no people in it. Let's see if I can get this a little lower.
Yeah, we got
and the wind actually blows right through. There we go. Now you can kind of see a little bit better. This is actually open space. And as the wind gets confused for these 2 floors, it actually affects about 4 or 5 floors above or below. So it dramatically reduces the wind effects.
Okay, I don't
at
know
St.
why it's
Regis.
going, and I want to make sure chat sees this because it's like it's dimming just a tad bit. But what you're saying is there are 2 floors somewhere in the middle of this height of this building that allows the wind to go straight through. Like it doesn't even like interact with the wind at all. It's just a bunch of like what vertical beams and stuff in there in that.
Yeah, there's columns around the outside that's holding up the outside shell above. In the middle, there's a concrete core as part of call it the rigid spine of the building, and it's going up and carrying the elevators and stairs to upper levels. But otherwise, it's wide open. Wind is blowing through it. Wind gets confused. It doesn't create vortices. I showed the video before. I said that was 2D. Of course, buildings are 3-dimensional. So this affects and reduces the wind over much of this upper stem of that tower.
Got it. Man, that's dope. Chat, y'all see that? That is crazy. Just load bearing columns. That's right. Opal guy, we see it. This is great. I see some other facts dropping in. And then you said this was the tallest building in the world designed by a female a woman architect. And I don't know if so. Linda, Linda was mentioned in the clip for the last building we talked about, 1000M. She wasn't the original architect, but she supervised it because the architect, I think the clip said that he passed. But was this Linda or was this another woman architect as well? Because I think it's cool that the audience knows that we have a phenomenal woman working in this field. But was this something Linda did or was it another name you said?
Yeah. So, in fairness, in total fairness, when we say, tallest building designed by this person or that person, right? Everybody's got a huge cast of really talented people behind them.
For sure.
So, on this building, St. Regis, Jeannie Gang, right? She was the visionary and the inspiration and a big part of the early layout and thinking about the building. But in the actual execution, it's a huge team of many, many people. Same goes for 1000M, right? And it was envisioned and started by the visionary Helmut Jahn, one of the, I'll call him most famous, most influential architects for several decades, and he sadly passed away just a few years ago. Linda was a very senior member of that design team, very influential during the latter stages of the design, as influential as anybody. But it's their teams, and there were brilliant people in both projects and brilliant women and men involved in both. Got it.
No, thank you for highlighting that. JM Sim said which floors? So these floors, are those the only 2 floors there that are empty on this one on St. Regis?
That's right. So actually there's a hotel down at the bottom, about 13 floors, and then it's all residential above that. So I'd say this deck here, everybody gets to enjoy. This deck here, pool. One family gets to enjoy. Yeah, their pool, they haven't filled it up yet here in this, but it's all apartment condo throughout, and it is just these 2 floors here at the close to the highest levels that are open, and frankly, that's one of the most influential places to do it. That's also there's all the damper tanks are up here at the roof, and that's where it does the most good for the building, where we can use the least space to get the best damping out of it.
How many dampers you said? You said this had more than one damper, right?
It actually has 6 tanks.
6 tanks. Chat, 6 tanks.
Yeah,
on this
and these
one.
tanks
cool.
are longer. These are like 80 feet tanks because they've got this building is taller and skinnier, so it sways closer to 6 to 6.5 seconds.
Man, so what do you think about when you see like these buildings? Like right now it's on Google Earth, right? And you were a part of the project. Like, what do you see? You talked about what got you motivated early on, but now when you look back at some of these projects, whether it be 1000M or St. Regis, like what do you feel? Like, what do you think when you think about how awesome it is?
Yeah. Maybe the best anecdote to put it in perspective is whenever I'm flying into a city, person next to me probably thinks I'm a tourist because I'm just glued to the little window looking at the buildings.
Too. I'm the same way. Yep.
Yeah, I want to understand the city, see the buildings, but as much as anything, I just look at the buildings that I got to work on and think about the experience. I mean, this building was 6 years of my career, overlapping with other projects, but I think about the people I worked with and all the amazing people who built it. So, I can list a dozen cities where I've done some incredible projects. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glued to the window. I'm staring at it, and that's immense gratitude to be part of it. And when I was 19, 20, and I picked the profession, I kind of look back and I go, yeah, good decision. Is exactly what you'd hoped it'd be, making a change on cities and where people live.
Nice, nice. Chat, go ahead and get some more content if you're coming on. Papa Sim, that's a lot of liquid referring to the tanks. Max, what is the max height a building could be using this tech? Somebody already spoke about that. Like, is there indeed a max height that you all go to or go based on in terms of standards when it comes to skyscrapers in general?
Right now, there's a tower that's being designed, presumably up to a kilometer. So that's
crazy.
much taller than anything in the U.S.
Yeah.
And from an engineering perspective, yeah, it can be done, and we can envision it, and we actually often to get a look at those projects closely. But you think about elevators,
Mm-hmm.
you think about air shafts and stairs, and as you go taller and taller, you need more and more of those to move people around the building. At a certain point, it just doesn't make sense because your whole building would be filled with elevators and columns, and no place to actually live. So there are, of course, at some point engineering limits, but I'd say at this point it feels more like it's at financial and space limits are what's keeping it from going taller.
Indeed. One more question from the chat over here on Twitch. And by the way, again, YouTube, if you haven't came and follow on Twitch, now's a good time to go do that. Hit follow. Shout out to the building committee on Twitch. And then after this, one more question. I'm going to get greedy, David. I'm just going to let you know. I want to see one more project. I would love to see one more project. But here's a quick question about the foundation. Like, how deep does this building have to be? Like, do you have to go pretty deep in regards to these foundations, right?
Yeah. So everything out here, out at kind of the east end on the lake, some of that was actually out in the water a couple hundred years ago, and it's still, fortunately, about 100 feet down, and there's a little variety. It's really, really good rock.
Mm-hmm.
So these buildings are designed on drilled concrete caissons. Sometimes they're 3 or 4 feet diameter. Sometimes they're 8, 10, or 12-foot diameter drilled concrete shafts.
Yeah.
Drilled down to the rock, into the rock, several feet, maybe 10 feet sometimes. So they're founded on massive elements. But actually, if you held the building back and you looked at the size of the building and looked at what's underneath it, it all is kind of a scale. But it's down on rock in a way that you could actually envision if all the soil was removed around it, it's standing up on stilts, and it's really designed that it would work that way.
That's awesome. Okay, so you got one more project you can show us? I want to see something else. You're blowing our minds right now, and I see you all's questions in the chat. Oh, okay. He already got the photo up here, ready to go.
Here we go.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm just sticking with Chicago because Chicago architecture is gorgeous, and we've done projects with really good, challenging constraints.
Yeah.
So this is 150 North Riverside. This is just, probably like 6 blocks west of the St. Regis I just showed you along the river. And, along this near edge, are along the train tracks underneath, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So this site was only developed in the last 5 years because the train tracks squeezed the site too much. No one could realize how to make it a profitable venture. So what we did is actually, this concrete width, this gray width you see here, this is a concrete core.
Yeah.
Goes down to those caissons, goes all the way to the roof. It's actually carrying stairs and elevators. But peeling off here, steel framing that is entirely undercut on both sides.
Yep.
It's equal. It's bringing down forces. Those. Here we go. There's a little cartoony rendering, right? Gravity loads. It's equal and opposite. So we can very much balance the steel framing and bring it right back onto the concrete box in the middle, make it very symmetrical. Of course, the wind's not symmetric. Wind blows from whatever direction it wants. So that's another aspect we think about. Yeah, here's kind of showing the constraints. Getting the caissons getting down to the rocks. Train tracks on one side. So yeah, 150 North Riverside, pretty recent. It's an office building as opposed to the other two were residential buildings, but just a beautiful new addition to Chicago in the last handful of years.
I wanna go see that building because it's so counterintuitive when you look at it. Because naturally, if you're building like something with blocks or anything, you're like, all right, I want a nice wide base, something that's nice, sizable, and then maybe I get narrower going up. But this one, it's like the base. It's crazy how it's so much smaller than, say, halfway up and towards the top, but it's still very secure.
Yeah, well, just to bring it full circle, when I growing up in that little town in Alaska, the place people go from Alaska often is through Seattle. So I would, this is a building here in Seattle. This is my window right here where I sit.
Oh, okay.
But when I was a kid coming through Seattle to visit family and go elsewhere, I came downtown and went to my family took me to a restaurant. It was actually right here. Walked out as a 10-year-old, probably looked up and saw this building and was kind of, I think, obviously amazed by it, but somewhere in my head it stuck as an inspiration. And, maybe that's what helped turn me into a structural engineer.
Wow.
And then after college, 2 weeks later, started work here at Magnuson Clemensic Associates, and it's where I come 5 days a week.
So that's where you're literally sitting in the building right now. That's narrow.
Sitting there right now. And interesting, and this undercut in a two-way is kind of like 150 North Riverside. It's, making it equal and opposite, bringing it down to a skinny base. In a way, it's kind of unexpected, but honestly, almost every day when I leave the building, there's someone outside with the camera taking a picture, being amazed by it, and it's satisfying. That's great.
Man, you walk into inspiration every day. That's the cool thing, man. You see this in the building that you work at. Chat, y'all got to give some loves for that, and I see it already. Wow. We got a lot of people that are very impressed by this. And I'm going to take a couple of questions too, really quick with you, David. And I really appreciate you showing us this stuff. Let's see. Can window cleaning be automated on supersized towers? That's another question. Window cleaning. How does that play a role? Like the maintenance? I guess that can go broader with maintenance in general, but this person asks about window cleaning.
Yeah, it used to always be someone on a rope on a little bosun's chair or on a platform, but these taller, more complicated buildings now, they're putting cranes on the roof. So 1000M has a crane on the roof. Guy crawls up in there, it extends out, it spins around and drops a bucket or a platform. Not automated yet, but a lot more sophisticated and safe and reliable than historically.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Here's another one. How would a building like that react to an earthquake, like the one you're sitting in, or the other one?
Hope it behaves well. Yeah. Structural engineers are, I think a highly competent group.
Mm-hmm.
My firm designed this back in the 70s. But every decade, the knowledge and the technology gets better and better and better.
Better and better, yeah.
So, we're always designed to the state of the art. We're always designing to meet the code or do better than the code. But it's only as good as the knowledge we have. So, we rely on the universities. They're always pushing the forefront of knowledge. And, this building, when it was designed to be earthquake safe. We don't use the word earthquake proof.
Right.
Today, we did redesign it. We do some things a little different. Fast forward 20 years, they do it different yet. So, as a group of 200 structural engineers here, we show up to it every day. I guess that tells you something about how we feel about the safety of the building, because Seattle doesn't get as much press as California, but it is still a very high seismic area. So we do expect earthquakes.
Indeed. Let's see if I can get one more question. I'm scrolling through here. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Nina says, thanks for taking my questions. We got a lot of appreciation. You all go ahead and feel free to share your appreciation. David, as you know, again, I told you I'm a structural engineer, and I listen, I could study this for a long time. I'm just like you when you said you're looking out at the skyline. Skyline is just like one of the most breathtaking things for me. I love nature scenic views, but I also love nice skyline or skyscape views as well. Let's see if there's any other question. Oh, I think someone asked about the amount of gallons in the water dampers. Maybe we can go back to, and let me share this for those who joined us late. Building Stuff with Nova, make sure you hit the follow button. But I'm going to show the picture again back for the 1000M. Like, how much water are we talking about in that damper?
Yeah, so 1000M has two matching dampers up at the roof. Altogether, 90,000 gallons of water.
90,000 gallons
Yeah.
And then the concrete
Takes a lot of
itself.
water.
So one of the
Just
things
gonna say
too,
it's a big building, so it takes a bit of water to push that swing a little bit the wrong way.
so is that what you mean when you say you tune the water though? You just try to figure out how much water exactly is needed?
Yeah, so the tuning is the biggest tuning we can do is the length of the tank and the depth of the water. If we make the water too shallow or too deep, it's going to sway, but it won't match the building. So it might be 4 seconds or 6 seconds, not 5. So we go with accelerometers. We look at how the building is swaying. We modulate the level of water in the tanks till we get it tuned and get our peak damping.
Got you. Let me see. And just get this in real quick. And I actually know some examples of this too. But are there any plans to start incorporating greenery or green spaces? And I know that this exists, but anything that you are aware of or you want to highlight when it comes to incorporating greenery into the city?
Yeah, I'll say that for a decade or more, green roofs started being very popular. And so if you're up in the plane, you look down, you might see a number that have, let's call it trays of grass and things that reduce the solar gain and absorb and filter some of the water. Those generally aren't seen by the public too much. And often roofs are pretty filled with other activities. What is very uncommon but is getting lots of press when it happens is when buildings, the sides of buildings kind of start getting clad with planters and elements that can grow and even grow into each other and start to cover buildings more so in greenery. Pretty rare. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole discussion if that's the most carbon reductive way to go about it, of actually building it on buildings versus elsewhere. But yeah, it's I'd say people dabble in it, but it's a small segment.
Not uncommon. Thank you all so much for the questions. Again, thank you for fielding these. David, this has been a phenomenal sneak peek, if you will, again, everyone, into our 3-part documentary series that is going to be debuting in November 13th. We have 3 building stuff documentaries coming to you live and direct from Nova. Nova, go ahead and drop that link again so people can check out more of the press release. And with that being said, David, can you just give us any more parting words of wisdom, of encouragement, of anything just to keep our minds, for those, particularly those who are inspired by the work that you're now doing in the same way that you were inspired by others? Any parting words of wisdom?
Well, yeah, it's a big question. I'll just say that, for those who are thinking about engineering or kids might think about engineering, it's a way to change the world, and it's a way to change the world in a lasting way, and use your knowledge to actually create things and build things that are tangible and affect our lives.
Indeed. There you have it, folks. Thank you so much, David. Make sure you all stay tuned here on Building Stuff with Nova. Follow us on Twitch. As you see, we have one more day this week. Tomorrow we're going to play Subnautica before we take a stream off on Friday. But Subnautica is a great game we were introduced to last Friday when we had a collab there on Twitch. We're going to try our hand at it together. So I look forward to you all. I need you all to hang out with me tomorrow, chat, to help me as we explore this underwater exoplanet tomorrow on Twitch. Same time, same place. But until then, again, thanks so much to you all for hanging out with us. Thank you to the building committee for returning and keeping the energy and vibes going good. And for everybody who was inspired by David's work and love the work that we're doing here on Building Stuff, make sure you set your alarm clocks, your calendars to check out the documentaries in November. And until tomorrow, we need you to keep building. Talk to you later. Peace.